Hi, I'm Ann Heap, and I'm going to show you today how to make a fancy shoe and shoebox cake. We're going to start with making the sole of the shoe. The way I like to do it, I actually have taken a real shoe that I purchased, get a cheap one since you're going to be mutilating it, and I basically cut away all of the top of the shoe, so all that's left is the sole. And I use this as my former for the sole. And what I'm going to do is I've actually created a template that fits right on the shoe. And I'm going to just cut this out of gum paste and place it right on the shoe and let it dry for at least a few days, if not a full week. So I'm just going to cut this with an X-Acto. If you want to speed up the process, you can add some Tylose to your gum paste, and that will help it dry out a little bit. It's always a good idea to add Tylose. When you're making the shoes, you want to try to make the pieces as far in advance as possible because they'll be a lot more sturdy, and you won't have to worry about them breaking when you're moving the cake. Okay. Oops. So this is the sole of my shoe, and I'm going to place it right onto the sole here. Put a little powdered sugar down first so that it doesn't stick when you want to take it off later. And we're going to let this dry just like this for, like I said, a few days up to a full week. Okay, so our sole is now dry. It's been drying for about a week. And I don't know if I mentioned this before, but I rolled this to about 1/8 of an inch thick. And that's a pretty good thickness for a basic shoe. If you wanted to do sort of a platform shoe, you're going to want to roll the base a little bit thicker. Or you can also add another piece to the bottom after it's dry. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually make a stitched piece that would sit on the inside of the shoe, sort of like the instep. So I'm going to cut out, again, this template. Now, if you want to be very exact about it, you can actually make a template for this instep also, or the inseam here. Inner seam, I should say. I just kind of cut it out by freehand. But that's your preference. What you want to do basically is you want the black piece to be a little bit smaller than the white sole. So I'm just going to kind of go around the outline, cutting away about, I'd say, 1/4 of an inch on each side. Just following the outline. And I'm just going to cut it on a straight edge, right about where the ball of the foot would meet the shoe. This is black gum paste I'm using. I rolled this out probably about 1/16 of an inch or so. Cut out the extra piece that we're going to place inside our sole. And I'm just going to take a stitch tool and just lightly stitch around the edge of it so it looks like it was sewn into the shoe. Now, I've just chosen black and white for my shoe, but you really use any color you want based on the designer that you're trying to mimic, or you can make up your own. Traditionally, I think most shoes have like a flesh color on the inside. Okay, so now I have my dried sole here, and I want to leave it right on the mold. I'm just going to take a little bit of water, brush it on here. I'm just going to let that dry again for another couple of days so that it is really nice and firm. Okay, so now we have our sole and it's nice and dry. We've let it dry for a few days, and we're going to make the heel. Now, you can actually make the heel at the same time you're making the sole, and then let them both dry for about a week. But just for today's purposes, I'm going to show you how to make the heel separately. Basically, the way I do it is I actually use modeling chocolate or gum paste as the heel, and I let it dry for a while. If I use modeling chocolate, which I have here today, you can let it dry for 2 weeks or so, and then you can wrap the gum paste around it to match whatever color shoe you have. So the good thing about this is that you can actually make a bunch of heels and a bunch of soles ahead of time, and then sort of use those as bases for whatever design you're going to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll my modeling chocolate into a log, and I can, since I have this shoe here, I can actually sort of measure how tall the heel needs to be. If you don't have a shoe and you're using like a piece of styrofoam, you can actually cut the shape of a sole. You then just have to gauge it a little bit by eye. I like to add a little skewer through the center of it because it adds a little bit of extra support. And generally, if we're going to put the shoe on top of the cake, it'll give it something to spike into. And if we don't put it on top of the cake, I can always clip this off and just royalize it right down to the board. This is good, especially if you're going to be transporting the cake or delivering it far away. You don't have to worry about it cracking or breaking. If you don't need to, then you really don't need to add this extra element. You can just let this dry. So you're going to roll it. Again, I'm going to gauge it. I'm going to roll it nice and thin. Okay, so now I've molded my heel, and you can see I put a 45-degree angle so that the heel, the sole will have something to sit on, and it'll be at the perfect angle. You can manipulate it a little bit if you don't have it perfect. When you're going to attach it, you can fill it in with a little extra modeling chocolate or gum paste. So we're going to let this dry again for a few days or up to a week. The modeling chocolate does set up pretty quickly, so if you do use modeling chocolate, you can I use it the next day even. Gum paste, you're going to want to let it dry out for at least a week because it's a solid piece.